Ourselves on the way to Bordeaux. We got up around 4 and just about ready for coffee. After a somewhat groggy start, in our case we started in Arras, which is about 180 kilometers from Paris and takes a little bit of over an hour to get there. Then when we arrived in Paris, we had to make our way to get Aimont-Penasse to catch the train to Bordeaux, which is some 584 kilometers away and takes roughly 2 hours 23 minutes. Bordeaux Saint-Jean station is much more stylish than its Paris counterpart, being in the classical style and much more architecturally pleasing. It seems we have arrived in Bordeaux and now we are trying to find a motel. And find accommodation we did. Just a short distance from the train station, or the GAC as they call it there, is the Ménager Hotel. Nicely appointed with fine facilities, and I truly do recommend the breakfast there. Well, after settling into our motel, we started to think about where we was. And where we was a city that actually dated back to pre-Roman times, as did most of Europe. At one stage it was Roman territory, and surprisingly they used it for mining lead and tin. And this sort of brings about a kind of dilemma. Lead is very dangerous, and you'd be worried that the lead would find its way into the wine. And there are also stories that the fall of the Roman Empire was brought about because of lead contamination. The Romans used to like their wine in glasses made of lead. We are of course assured that the lead levels in the wines in Bordeaux are perfectly safe, even though the way you tell whether or not a wine from Bordeaux is genuine or otherwise is by the lead isotopes that it contains. But nonetheless, yeah, I think I'll risk it.
Bordeaux was originally known as Bordeaux by its original Celtic inhabitants around 300 BC, and remained peaceful until 60 BC, when the Roman Empire invaded. During the Roman Empire, it was a central hub for lead and tin mining, and then shortly became the capital of Roman Aquitaine. The end of the Roman rule was brought about by multiple sackings from such tribes as the Vandals, Visigoths, and finally, the Franks, which then ensued a period of chaos and plundering. During this time, the name evolved from Bordeaux to Bordeaux and finally to Bordeaux, the Basque word for Bordeaux, which is derived from bord de l'eau, along the water. It was not until 1152, when Eleanor, Duchess of Aquitaine and ex-wife of King Louis VII of France, married Henri Plantagenet. This union marked a turning point for not just the city, but also the region, as months later Henri Plantagenet became King Henry II of England, bringing the territory under English rule for the following 3 centuries. During this time, Bordeaux grew in both size and reputation, primarily due to the ever-growing wine trade that was made possible by the winemakers being so close to the Garonne River, their primary link to the rest of the world, which resulted in such widespread commercial success. The English rule of Bordeaux came to an end after the Battle of Castellon, during which the English were decisively defeated by the French, marking the end of the 100 Years' War, 1337 to 1453. Bordeaux and its region were once again under French rule, which carried on the ever-expanding wine trade, which in the 16th century was coupled with the sugar and slave trade from the West Indies. It was not until the 18th century that Bordeaux entered its golden age, with Bordeaux becoming the second largest European port after London. Also during this time, coincidentally the Age of Enlightenment, approximately 5,000 buildings were designed and built by architect Victor Louis, including those that expand the riverfront, as well as the Grand Theatre Opera House, raising Bordeaux's profile to that of the wealthy and bourgeois city. The French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, gave birth to the Girondins political group, which was a sort of counter-revolutionary party to the Montagnards, a radical group based in Paris. They were tragically defeated and executed by the Montagnards during the Reign of Terror, a dark chapter of France's history that brought about multiple massacres and public executions. It was not until the end of the Revolution in 1799 and the arrival of Napoleon that the Reign of Terror ended. In 1814, the Duke of Wellington marched onto Bordeaux. Due to damages made throughout the Spanish Wars, Bordeaux was ready to renounce Napoleon and declare loyalty to the Bourbon monarchy, naming Louis XVIII's grandnephew as the Duc de Bordeaux. During this time, Bordeaux prospered and evolved. The Pont de Pierre, the first bridge to cross the Garonne River, was built. In 1848, during the Second French Revolution, Bordeaux reluctantly rejoined the Republic. Over the following century, the French government temporarily relocated to Bordeaux in times of war, the Franco-Prussian War, World War I, and World War II. However, during the latter it was then relocated again to Vichy. During the Second World War, Bordeaux was occupied by the German invaders, yet was a central hub for the resistance movement. Bordeaux would remain occupied until August 1944. During the following decades, Bordeaux experienced mass redevelopment under its new mayor, Jacques Chaban-Delmas. More bridges were built to connect the city to the rest of the country and Europe, universities and hospitals were built. By 1960, Bordeaux has become the capital of the Nouvelle Aquitaine region, allowing it to prosper economically and industrially. In 1995, Alain Juppe became mayor of Bordeaux, and it is largely due to him that Bordeaux has today become such a vibrant and important city. During his tenure, he launched plans to renovate and clean the 18th century buildings around Bordeaux, introduce a public tram system to minimize excessive traffic in the city, and transform the old town into a pedestrian area. His leadership and work came through in 2007 when Bordeaux was awarded the status of a UNESCO World Heritage Site for being of outstanding universal value and for its historic role as a place of cultural exchange. Since then it has grown and developed, and in 2015 was voted the best European destination by a landslide. It has become a cultural melting pot that has retained its historical authenticity and is now one of the most visited cities in France.
Well, happy to say that the wine went down well. French wine is magnificent. Anybody who has seen my opening credits will notice an opening bridge. It is in fact the Swansea Bridge in New South Wales, Swansea, Australia, and it is my job to open and close it. And it turns out in Bordeaux is the largest lift span bridge in Europe. Crossing the Garonne River, the Von Jacques-Javon Bridge is an amazing structure. And after a couple of goes and telling people, yeah, I work on one of these too, I got a better look than the average tourist would, and I'm happy to share it with you.
Pont Jacques Chaban-Delmas is a remarkable vertical lift bridge spanning the Garonne. Inauguration, March 16, 2013. Height, 35 meters, 115 feet, when raised, making it the highest lift bridge in Europe. Length, 575 meters. Width, 32 meters. Longest span, 110 meters. Design, a modern and elegant structure, it's considered an architectural feat. And named after Jacques Chaban-Delmas, a former French Prime Minister and Mayor of Bordeaux.
It was a beautiful morning. Traffic was already backing up. The traffic warden was in position at the barriers for pedestrian and vehicular safety. The control room of the bridge is on the opposite side to the main city and is staffed by two operators with mimic screens telling the operators what is happening, and they are in constant communication with all parties concerned. The lift had been started and the barriers had been lowered, and a safe eye was running over the winching mechanism by the head engineer, which appeared to be working correctly. The drums seemed to turn slowly, however the bridge seemed to lift quite quickly, lifting some 50 meters, with junior staff on hand to assist should there be any problem. The vessel safely cleared the bridge, and after 15 minutes, as opposed to our normal 4 minutes, the lift was completed.
Oh my goodness, the bottle's almost empty. It's difficult to separate France from wine, and Bordeaux is one of the premium wine producing regions in France. And as such, they have a wine museum known as Cite, which sets about explaining the full history of wine starting from Egyptian times, although I believe no one truly knows when wine production started, right through to modern times, different flavours and processes that are involved. And it's definitely well worth a visit. I went there and I'll take you along with me.
One cannot help but be struck by the amazing architecture of La Cité du Var. It was the child of Alain Juppé. In his 2008 election campaign, he proposed the concept, and the contract was eventually given to XTU Architects, with the building being finished on the 1st of July 2016, and it is said to resemble wine swilling around in a glass. Upon entry, there are a number of models explaining the architecture. Then you need to go through the formalities of purchasing a ticket, and as we all know, nothing in life is free. Scattered almost randomly is a series of artwork, antiques and animated displays. Then you are met by a graphic display of wooden bottles explaining the 6 wine families, followed by a display of bottles.
And for those who may be curious, the wine families are red, white, rose, sparkling, sweet and fortified.
It's the grapevine that does most of the work. Its functionality and care are clearly explained in the display, along with the many varieties thereof and the wines which can be made from them. The next factor on wine is the climate, soils and local tastes. The exhibition has an interactive wine map with every wine producing area in the world, with the wines produced and the specialities of the area. This gives a deep insight into wine production and types. History of wine parallels the history of humanity. From the earliest times, some kind of wine was produced. The exhibition starts from Egyptian times and crosses such things as taxation and customs surrounding the beverage, and I will give particular attention to champagne, a French speciality.
One of the most famous French beverages is champagne, and that's why I'm going to look at it with some detail. It's used in a variety of ways. It is said by many that the correct way to open a bottle of champagne is with a sword. I've never done that, nor do I believe in spraying it everywhere like motor racing champions do, and wasting it. But it was made by accident, and it was on account of the cold conditions where it was brewed. The fermentation process would stop, and then when things warmed up it would restart again in the bottle. And the French saw it as second best and didn't even like it. However, the English simply loved it and never wanted to miss an opportunity in terms of making money. The French sent champagne to England by the bucket load, but eventually they got a taste for it themselves. Wine and such things always has a bit of mystery. Like, I remember all the ads for Scotch. This is a very finely brewed Australian Scotch known as Sullivan's Cove. And the main thing they go on about is the water. The water goes down from the spring and across the valley and through the peat, and it's brewed and such things. And when we visited this distillery, I asked them about the water, and they said, well, have a guess, there's no such thing as a wrong guess. And of course I said what everyone said, you must have a spring or something like that. They said no, we use tap water, and so this is rated as one of the top scotches in the world. So that's part of the mystery of wine and brewing and such things.
Fascinating journey that spans centuries. Here's a glimpse. Early beginnings. Roman influence. The Romans planted vineyards in the Champagne region as early as the 5th century AD. Early wine. The initial wines were still and likely pale pink. Royal connection. Champagne gained prominence when it was served at the coronations of French kings in Reims. The rise of sparkling wine. Accidental discovery. The unique climate of Champagne led to the development of sparkling wine. Cold winters halted fermentation, and when spring arrived, the warmth caused a second fermentation within the bottle, creating the bubbles. Early challenges. Initially, the bubbles were considered a flaw, and exploding bottles were a common occurrence. Dom Perignon and the Devil's Wine. Myth and reality. While often credited with inventing champagne, Dom Perignon, a Benedictine monk, played a crucial role in improving its quality and production methods. He sought to eliminate the Devil's Wine, referring to the exploding bottles, and improve consistency. The 18th century, a growing popularity, royal favour. Champagne gained favour among the French aristocracy, and eventually became a symbol of luxury and celebration. Growth of champagne houses. Several prestigious champagne houses were established during this period, including Ruinart, Monet and Chandon, and Veuve Clicquot. The 19th century, refinement and expansion. Method Champenois. The development of the Method Champenois, secondary fermentation in the bottle, standardized the production process and assured consistent quality. Global expansion. Champagne's popularity spread across Europe and beyond, solidifying its position as a global icon. The 20th and 21st centuries. Continued innovation. Continuous advancements in viticulture and winemaking techniques have led to even higher quality champagne, a global icon. Champagne remains a symbol of luxury, celebration, and sophistication worldwide. I hope this brief overview gives you a taste of the rich history of champagne.
The science of viticulture should not be underestimated. From the wood used in the barrels to various compounds added to enhance flavours in the wine. The museum has a row showing different types of things which are added to wine and different flavours, and gives you the ability to sniff them and enjoy them. In the case of my travelling companion Leap, he particularly liked the flavour coffee. I think he must have sniffed it about 20 times. Although not a wine, bourbon uses former fortified wine barrels and burns them to give them the distinctive flavour, so it too relies on viticulture. And after all that, one might feel like a glass of wine, and that has been catered for too. Near the top of the building is a bar that can serve you a glass of wine with a wide selection from wines all over the world. However, you are limited to one glass, and that is unfortunate because you may feel like more. And the views from this tower are very good and well worth savouring the wine and enjoying the views. The price of the ticket includes this glass of wine. There is also a restaurant, however we did not visit that.
Well, the gigantic corkscrew deserves a bit of special attention. When I first arrived in France, I was desperately trying to try some wine, and it turned out that all the bottles there are corked and we had to go and buy one, and it was no fun. Even the cork, or a lack of a cork, can affect the taste of wine, so everything has an effect. But one of the latest French innovations is not to have a cork at all, but nor a screw top. They have a very closely fitting glass cork in the bottles, which seems to work well, and the bottles lend themselves to other uses after the wine has been finished. Around the outskirts of the wine museum is a range of locks of amazing complexity, and I couldn't understand the need for them. However, later on I walked our way up the tributary to the Grand River and found a cement structure. It turns out that cement structure was a German U-boat submarine pen. So I guess the locks had a couple of functions: to raise the water level so the U-boats could go in and out, and also to protect the U-boats from being attacked by another one. It wasn't possible for me to have a look inside, but there was some work going on there, and perhaps that will be some future museum, so keep an eye out for that. It would be particularly interesting if they got a German U-boat to display there in situ.
Some things to notice are the very solidly constructed blast doors, as well as the anti-aircraft defences on the top of the building. I do not know if ever they were tested, but they are certainly impressive, and subsequent researchers found that it is being turned into, or may be already, a digital art museum. On my next trip to Bordeaux, I'll be sure to have a look. All this stuff on YouTube about aliens and UFOs, come on. But after a couple of glasses of wine in Bordeaux, oh my God. Well, the truth is, it was an art installation done by British artist Suzanne Treisler. On the subject of art installations, out the front of the Maritime Museum is a gigantic shark by artist Richard Texier. It's not only aliens and sharks, one is also surprised by the street performers in Bordeaux. Take these gentlemen from Latin America. Well, it had been a long day and I was starting to get a little hungry, so I took the tram down to a place I found on a local tourist map while my friend attended to his phone addiction. A slice of Australia right in Bordeaux is the Australian bar in Bordeaux. I remember walking into the bar, walking up to the barman and said, "Bonjour" or "G'day." The barman said "G'day's fine here," and I had a couple of beers and had a delicious Australian meal. Place de Conquest features a magnificent Ferris wheel, and upon riding it you get magnificent views of the surrounding city.
And nearby to the Ferris wheel is the statue of Montaigne, a famous French philosopher, along with a beautiful fountain known as the Monument Auger aux Dames, which is dedicated to a group of French revolutionaries.
Just a walk around Bordeaux is a photographer's dream, whether it is Roman arches left from when the city was walled, whether it is the Auguste Place Victor, or even a clock tower. There are so many amazing opportunities for photographs. This is to say nothing of the cathedrals, Basilique Saint-Michel, or in English, Basilica of Saint Michael.
Another surprising thing was how industrial Bordeaux was. On the way in on the train, I expected to see endless vineyards, but what in fact I did see was endless industries. I'll give you a quick rundown on what they have and what they're doing.
The Bordeaux region in France is most famous for its wine industry, however there is much more. Beyond wine. While wine is the dominant industry, Bordeaux also has a growing presence in aeronautics and aerospace. Major companies like Dassault Aviation and Airbus have a strong presence in the region. Research and innovation. Bordeaux is a center for research and development in various fields, including medicine, biotechnology, and material science.
Well, thank you for watching. This is the end of the video, and sadly it's also the end of France. Bordeaux has a lot more to offer than that, but I tried to pick out the best things. France is a country I would love to return to, and I would especially like to spend some time in Paris. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't like cities, so for me to say that, it must be truly something special. And I think we should drink a toast to France. Viva France! Merci beaucoup. Until next time.
And it goes without saying, please like and subscribe.